It was a humid September evening in 1989 when 22-year-old Veronica Lane left her shift at a small diner in Jackson, Mississippi. Known for her bright smile, dedication to work, and involvement in local theater productions, Veronica had plans to meet a friend briefly before returning to her apartment on the outskirts of the city. She never arrived. Her absence was noticed almost immediately. When Veronica failed to call her roommate, concern escalated. The following morning, her family and friends reported her missing to the Jackson Police Department. Detective Clara Jefferson was assigned to the case, recognizing that Veronica's disappearance was unusual. Reliable, responsible, and cautious by nature, she had left no indication of voluntarily leaving town. The initial investigation faced numerous challenges. In 1989, surveillance cameras were rare and few streets were monitored. Witnesses were limited and early reports were vague. A man seen near the diner that evening, a car idling across the street, and distant accounts of a figure walking quickly along side streets. Detective Jefferson carefully documented every detail, knowing that even the smallest piece of information could become crucial. Veronica's parents, Linda and Robert Lane, became central to the search efforts. Flyers were posted across the city. Local news ran stories about her disappearance, and volunteers organized searches in nearby neighborhoods. Despite their tireless efforts, days turned into weeks with no sign of Veronica. The trail went cold and the case faded into uncertainty. For decades, Veronica's disappearance remained unresolved. In 2024, the Mississippi Cold Case Unit decided to reopen her investigation. Detective Evelyn Carter, known for her thoroughness and patience, reviewed the original files, notes, photographs, and evidence. Physical items previously deemed inconclusive, fibers, partial fingerprints, and hair samples, were reanalyzed using modern forensic techniques. DNA testing soon provided a breakthrough. Hair fragments preserved from the original investigation were successfully sequenced. Partial fingerprints were cross-checked against national databases, revealing a match to Derek Coleman, a man with a prior record of offenses in Jackson during the late 1980s. Coleman had resided and worked near the route Veronica took after leaving the diner, placing him in proximity at the critical time. Witnesses from 1989 were re-interviewed using cognitive enhancement techniques to recover faded memories. A neighbor remembered seeing a tall man lingering near the alley behind the diner shortly after Veronica left. A delivery driver recalled a dark sedan parked along a nearby street, its driver observing the area. Although decades had passed, consistent recollections strengthened the connection to Derek Coleman. Investigators reconstructed Veronica's final movements. She left the diner at 7:50 p.m., heading toward her apartment along familiar streets. Coleman's presence was verified through employment records, utility bills, and historical location data, positioning him along her route multiple times. Each confirmed location helped form a pattern that investigators could analyze scientifically. Investigators examined Coleman's former residences and storage areas. Clothing and personal items recovered contained fibers matching those found near the alley behind the diner. Hair fragments consistent with Veronica's DNA were also discovered among his belongings. Individually minor, these findings collectively formed a compelling link to her disappearance. Interrogation was approached strategically. Detective Carter presented Coleman with DNA matches, fiber comparisons, fingerprints, and corroborated witness accounts. He initially denied involvement, claiming that his presence in the area was coincidental. Investigators noted hesitations and inconsistencies in his statements, gradually confronting him with irrefutable evidence. Eventually, he admitted being near Veronica but tried to downplay his actions. Spatial analysis became a crucial tool. Investigators mapped Coleman's movements alongside Veronica's reconstructed path, pinpointing intersections supported by forensic evidence and witness accounts. Behavioral patterns from his past, including minor offenses and suspicious activities, helped contextualize his potential involvement. Community engagement played a pivotal role. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues contributed memories of Veronica's habits, routines, and personality. Their input validated witness statements and helped interpret forensic findings within the context of her life, ensuring that she remained central to the investigation. All forensic evidence underwent meticulous re-examination. DNA samples were retested for accuracy, fibers independently verified, and fingerprints analyzed with advanced technology. Detailed documentation ensured every piece of evidence could withstand scrutiny in court. Investigators also scrutinized Coleman's activities in the days surrounding Veronica's disappearance. Employment records, personal communications, and location data were cross-referenced with witness accounts and physical evidence, confirming opportunities for him to encounter Veronica. The cold case unit organized all findings for prosecutorial review. Visual aids, maps, and chronological reconstructions illustrated the sequence of events. The narrative highlighted both scientific accuracy and the human story behind Veronica's disappearance. Community engagement continued throughout. Residents followed updates closely, organized remembrance events, and contributed recollections that might assist investigators. Their involvement reinforced the significance of persistence in solving cold cases. Veronica's parents, Linda and Robert Lane, provided critical insights into her daily routines, habits, and character. Their knowledge validated witness statements and aligned with physical evidence, while emphasizing the human impact of the case. Investigators systematically considered alternative explanations. Coincidence, misidentification, or accidental transfer of evidence were ruled out through cross-referencing witness accounts, forensic data, and reconstructed timelines. The combination of scientific analysis and witness testimony produced a coherent narrative. Detective Carter reflected on the importance of diligence. Every note, every fiber, every recollection mattered. Even decades later, they formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her philosophy exemplified the cold case unit. Persistence, scientific rigor, and methodical analysis could bring justice to cases long thought unsolvable. By 2024, investigators had compiled a fully verified case against Derek Coleman. Physical evidence, behavioral patterns, witness testimony, and Coleman's partial admissions formed a compelling, legally robust case ready for prosecution. Veronica Lane's story, once obscured by decades of uncertainty, was illuminated through science, perseverance, and community involvement. Preserved evidence, re-examined with modern techniques, transformed a cold case into a pathway toward justice. The narrative emphasized both forensic precision and the human story of loss and determination. The reconstructed timeline, combined with witness accounts and forensic evidence, provided a clear chronological sequence. Jurors would later be able to follow the investigation logically, understanding how each piece of evidence linked Coleman to Veronica and the sequence of events leading to her disappearance. Through tireless dedication, the cold case unit not only identified a suspect, but also reconstructed the events surrounding Veronica's disappearance. Every step preserved the integrity of the case, ensuring that when it reached the courtroom, justice could be delivered without compromise. Veronica Lane's story demonstrated that even when a disappearance seems unsolvable, persistence, modern forensic methods, and community vigilance can bring the truth to light. Families, investigators, and communities contributed collectively, ensuring that no detail was overlooked and that every lead was thoroughly explored. Once Derek Coleman was identified as a person of interest, the Mississippi Cold Case Unit intensified its efforts. Detective Evelyn Carter meticulously reconstructed the night of September 12, 1989, using every preserved note, photograph, and piece of physical evidence from the original investigation. Despite the decades that had passed, careful preservation allowed investigators to piece together a detailed timeline that would later be pivotal in court. Coleman's movements were analyzed using employment records, residential histories, and any available historical documentation. Witnesses from 1989 were re-interviewed using cognitive enhancement techniques to recover faded memories. A neighbor recalled seeing a tall man near the alley behind the diner shortly after Veronica left. A delivery driver remembered a dark sedan parked on a side street, its driver seemingly observing the area. Although decades had passed, these accounts were remarkably consistent and aligned with preserved forensic evidence. Physical evidence played a critical role. Fibers collected from the alley matched materials from Coleman's clothing. Hair fragments preserved for decades were successfully sequenced and confirmed to be Veronica's. Partial fingerprints recovered from nearby surfaces were reanalyzed with modern techniques, placing Coleman at key locations during the evening in question. While each piece of evidence seemed minor on its own, together they formed a compelling chain connecting him to Veronica's disappearance. Investigators examined Coleman's former residences and storage units. Clothing and personal items recovered contained fibers consistent with those found near the alley, and hair fragments matching Veronica's DNA were discovered among his belongings. The accumulation of these findings, thoroughly documented and verified, strengthened the link to her disappearance. Interrogation was conducted strategically. Detective Carter presented Coleman with the collected evidence: DNA matches, fiber comparisons, fingerprints, and corroborated witness statements. He initially denied involvement, claiming his presence in the area was coincidental. Investigators observed inconsistencies in his statements and hesitations in his recollections. Confronted with overwhelming evidence, he admitted being in the vicinity but attempted to minimize the nature of his actions. Spatial analysis became crucial. Investigators mapped Coleman's movements alongside Veronica's reconstructed path, highlighting intersections supported by witness accounts and physical evidence. Behavioral patterns from his past, including previous minor offenses and suspicious activities, helped contextualize his presence and potential involvement. Community engagement was pivotal. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues contributed personal memories of Veronica's routines, habits, and personality. Their accounts helped validate witness statements and interpret forensic findings within the context of her life. The investigation remained centered on Veronica, ensuring she was seen as a person, not merely a missing case. All forensic evidence underwent rigorous re-examination. DNA was retested for accuracy, fibers were independently verified, and fingerprints were analyzed using advanced methods. Meticulous documentation ensured every piece could withstand scrutiny in court, reinforcing the credibility of the investigation. Investigators also scrutinized Coleman's activities in the days surrounding Veronica's disappearance. Employment records, communications, and location data were cross-referenced with witness accounts and physical evidence, confirming opportunities for him to encounter her. This detailed reconstruction strengthened the prosecution's case and ensured no potential scenario was overlooked. The cold case unit prepared all findings for prosecutorial review. Visual reconstructions, maps, and chronological timelines illustrated the sequence of events, ensuring that both investigators and jurors could follow the case logically. The narrative emphasized forensic accuracy, emotional weight, and the human story behind Veronica's disappearance. Community engagement continued throughout the investigation. Residents organized remembrance events, provided any lingering details, and maintained attention on the case. Their involvement was crucial in preserving public awareness and reinforcing the importance of persistence in solving cold cases. Veronica's parents, Linda and Robert Lane, contributed critical insights. Their detailed knowledge of her daily routines, habits, and personality helped validate witness statements and interpret forensic evidence. Their testimony emphasized the personal impact of the crime and the significance of finally resolving the case after decades of uncertainty. Investigators systematically eliminated alternative explanations. Coincidence, misidentification, and accidental evidence transfer were carefully ruled out. The combination of DNA analysis, fiber evidence, fingerprint matches, and corroborated witness statements produced a coherent, compelling narrative. Detective Carter reflected on the importance of diligence. Every note, every fiber, every statement mattered. Even decades later, they formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her philosophy exemplified the cold case unit's approach. Persistence, scientific rigor, and methodical investigation could bring justice to cases long thought unsolvable. By 2024, investigators had compiled a complete verified case against Derek Coleman. Every detail of Veronica Lane's disappearance was reconstructed and corroborated. Physical evidence, behavioral analysis, witness testimony, and Coleman's partial admissions formed a compelling, legally robust case ready for trial. Veronica's story, once obscured by decades of uncertainty, was illuminated through modern forensic science, persistence, and community collaboration. Preserved evidence, re-examined with new techniques, transformed a decades-old cold case into a pathway to justice. The narrative emphasized both scientific precision and the human story behind her disappearance. The reconstructed timeline, combined with witness accounts and forensic findings, provided a clear chronological sequence of events. Jurors would later be able to follow the investigation logically, understanding how each piece of evidence linked Coleman to Veronica and how the events unfolded that evening. Through tireless dedication, the cold case unit not only identified a suspect, but reconstructed the events surrounding Veronica's disappearance in extraordinary detail. Every investigative step was carefully documented, ensuring that when the case reached the courtroom, justice could be delivered with integrity and clarity. Veronica Lane's story demonstrated that even when a disappearance seems unsolvable, dedication, modern forensic methods, and community vigilance can bring truth to light. Families, investigators, and communities contributed collectively, ensuring no detail was overlooked and every lead was thoroughly explored. By combining historical evidence with modern investigative techniques, the cold case unit transformed uncertainty into accountability, providing long overdue closure. The Jackson courthouse was tense with anticipation, the air heavy with decades of grief, hope, and the promise of justice finally arriving. Friends, family, and community members filled the benches, carrying the weight of uncertainty that had shadowed them since 1989. In the front row, Linda and Robert Lane clutched each other's hands, their faces marked by both sorrow and anticipation. The long wait for closure was about to end. The trial opened with the prosecution presenting Veronica Lane not simply as a missing person, but as a vibrant, intelligent, and compassionate young woman whose life had been tragically interrupted. Witnesses described her dedication to her work at the diner, her involvement in local theater, and her mentorship of younger community members. Jurors were reminded that this case was about the loss of a life, the pain endured by her family, and the perseverance of a community that had refused to let her story fade. Detective Evelyn Carter detailed the reconstructed timeline of September 12, 1989. Veronica had left the diner at 7:50 p.m., intending to walk home. Derek Coleman's confirmed presence in the area, verified through employment and residential records as well as corroborated witness statements, established opportunity. Visual reconstructions illustrated her route, the locations where forensic evidence was found, and Coleman's movements, giving the jury a clear picture of the sequence of events. Forensic experts took the stand to explain the science that had revived the case. Dr. Maria Thompson testified to fiber matches linking Coleman's clothing to the alley behind the diner, hair fragments matching Veronica's DNA, and partial fingerprints placing Coleman at critical locations. Each expert explained the validity of modern forensic methods and the importance of preserving evidence, demonstrating how decades-old items could conclusively connect a suspect to the victim. Witnesses from 1989 provided testimony as well. The cafe employee described seeing a tall man near the alley shortly after Veronica left. A delivery driver recalled a dark sedan parked nearby, its driver watching the building. Though memories were decades old, the consistency across multiple accounts reinforced forensic findings and helped establish a coherent narrative of events. The defense attempted to cast doubt on the reliability of long-past memories and the integrity of preserved evidence. They argued that fibers or hair might have been transferred innocently, and that witness recollections could be flawed. The prosecution countered with meticulous documentation, independent verification of forensic evidence, and cognitive-enhanced witness testimony. Each objection was addressed, leaving the jury with a clear and evidence-backed understanding of the case. Linda and Robert Lane testified about Veronica's habits, routines, and personality. Linda described her daughter's conscientious nature, her attentiveness to friends and family, and her predictable daily paths. Robert recounted her community engagement and her interactions with neighbors and colleagues. Their testimony emphasized that this case was about a person with a life, not merely a missing file, and it reinforced the human cost of the crime. Behavioral analysis of Coleman was introduced to provide context. Previous minor offenses, patterns of suspicious activity, and documented loitering incidents were used to explain how he might have encountered Veronica. While not direct proof of guilt, these insights helped jurors understand the likelihood of his presence along her route. Evidence was presented visually with timelines, maps and reconstructions illustrating how Coleman's movements intersected with Veronica's path and correlated with physical evidence. The combination of scientific testimony, eyewitness accounts, and visual aids created a comprehensive picture for the jury to understand. Coleman's repeated denials were systematically dismantled. Inconsistent statements were confronted with corroborating forensic evidence. Fibers, hair fragments, and fingerprints created a continuous link between him and Veronica, leaving little doubt in the minds of jurors. After days of testimony, the jury began deliberations. They reviewed forensic reports, witness statements, maps, and timelines, cross-referencing details to ensure a fair and informed decision. Hours later, the foreperson read aloud, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Derek Coleman, guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping." The announcement was met with tears, relief, and a mixture of sorrow and vindication from the Lane family. For more than 30 years, they had endured uncertainty and pain. Now justice had been served. Friends, neighbors, and community members quietly celebrated, acknowledging the perseverance that had kept Veronica's story alive and ensured accountability. The resolution of the case resonated throughout Jackson and beyond. Local media highlighted the power of modern forensic science, the importance of preserving evidence, and the dedication of law enforcement and families in cold cases. Memorial services celebrated Veronica's life, emphasizing her contributions to the community and ensuring her story would inspire future generations. Linda and Robert Lane became advocates for cold case awareness, speaking publicly about the importance of preserving evidence, pursuing leads, and never losing hope. Their story inspired other families, showing that persistence and scientific advances could illuminate truth thought lost. The Jackson Police Department drew lessons from the case. Evidence preservation protocols, interagency cooperation, and systematic review of unresolved cases were strengthened. Veronica Lane's case became a model for how decades-old cases could be reopened and resolved, highlighting the critical role of modern forensics combined with dedicated investigative work. Veronica's legacy extended beyond the courtroom. Scholarships, mentorship programs, and community initiatives were established in her name, focusing on education, arts, and civic engagement. Friends and family organized events to honor her life, ensuring her impact continued to resonate in the community. Detective Carter reflected on the case. Time cannot erase the truth. Every note, every fiber, every witness statement mattered. This case proves that even decades-old mysteries can be solved, and justice can prevail through diligence, science, and unwavering commitment. Her words highlighted the broader significance of the case, demonstrating the power of persistence, forensic science, and community cooperation in achieving closure. The streets of Jackson, once silent witnesses to Veronica's disappearance, now stood as symbols of resilience and justice. Collaboration between law enforcement, family, and community ensured her memory was preserved and the truth emerged. Even after decades of silence, decades of unanswered questions were replaced with clarity. The resolution of Veronica Lane's case exemplified that patience, meticulous investigation, and modern forensic science could overcome time and uncertainty, ensuring that no crime, however long unresolved, remained hidden. Families, investigators, and communities were reminded that persistent effort could illuminate even the darkest pasts. Veronica's story is a testament to hope, perseverance, and the enduring power of justice. Her life, contributions, and the tireless efforts of those who refused to give up ensured that her story would inspire others to continue seeking truth, preserving memory, and holding perpetrators accountable. Through her legacy, it became clear: time may pass, but justice can prevail, and the lives of victims will never be forgotten.